It's about the restoration of our republic. We want to educate, encourage, enable the power. We stand for integrity, honesty, self-reliance, self-defense, and most importantly, no compromise on our foundational principles. This is America's Voice Now.
Find America's Voice Now on Facebook and at americasvoicenow.org. Here's Michael Evans.
Good morning, America. You're listening to America's Voice Now. My name is Michael Evans. I'll be your host this morning. Thanks for joining with us. Appreciate it. I see a ton of you folks out there at St. Croix Falls. I see Scurry. I see Mountain Home. It's right near me. I see Clarksville, Kittanning, Gainesville, Maryland. Gainesville, Maryland. I got an email from Gainesville, Maryland yesterday that corrected me that it's not in Virginia, it's in Maryland. Okay, so thanks for joining with us. I hope you're catching us live on our website at americasvoicenow.org. You can also listen to the program on audio at patriotfb.com and constitutionclub.ning.com. The idea is that we try to bring you the news that is current for the given day that we're doing the program, but to give you a different angle on it so that you understand it in a way that was not intended by the Ministry of Propaganda. Because their goal is to, they're like smoke bombs, right? Their job is to inject confusion and chaos into the dialogue, into the narrative, so that you can't figure out what's really going on. Their job is to sow the seeds of chaos, to keep you off balance, to keep you unfocused, and not knowing which direction to turn. I hear over and over and over from listeners who say to me, I don't know what to do. And I understand. You're being prepped to not understand. They want you off balance. They want this level of tyrannical behavior and confusing behavior to be so dismissive, so disruptive that you can't get your balance. That's the game plan. Because if you could get your balance, you could mount a defense. See, the idea is to constantly keep you in a state of confusion and insecurity. You're not sure what you should do next, how you should do it. And it's almost like every statement these people make, every action they take, every move, every law passed, everything discussed, it's all designed to accomplish two different goals. Keep you confused, and secondarily, while you're confused, to be running the ball around your defenses. With the ultimate goal, the end game being that at some point in time, the United States is so unbalanced that when they are able to structure and engineer a collapse and a coup, and that's essentially what it will be, the coming coup, then we'll not be in a position where we can effectively fight back. I introduce you to Luis Gutierrez. This is our first topic this morning. He's telling American companies to break the law. Every institution in America should work around federal immigration laws. That's what he just said. I mean, the idea that you've got a representative of the government who's an elected official who's also simultaneously telling you to break the law is disconcerting to say the least, but quite frankly, I would consider that to be inciting law-breaking behavior, inciting crime. Our second topic this morning will be the VA-run death panels are made up of corrupt and lazy murderers. And we're going to understand how that's happening because this VA thing is blowing wide open. 19 states now have investigations going full blast. 19. Vets are committing suicide because they cannot get the medical treatment they need, and they know they're dying. I mean, what kind of a choice is that to be given as a member of our society, first and foremost? That you cannot get medical care because you're only limited to go to the VA. You're not qualified to go to a regular hospital. And so you're you're starving in the midst of plenty. And the people that are making the decisions are notorious for penalizing whistleblowers for spilling the beans. And so we're going to suggest that, and I've got an idea for you that we're going to talk a little bit about during that segment, that there is a way for us to get around this issue, and that is to essentially create the equivalent of what I had originally suggested, which was to create these citizen and civilian ombudsman programs. And I'm going to show you how we can do that. Our third segment is Obamacare's new rules bail out the insurance companies. Is there any surprise there? They know there's a coming storm of fiscal liability associated with Obamacare. And they know that there's no way these insurance companies are going to stand there and hold the bag. And so they've put in place new rules to change it. Our fourth segment will be money designated for the poor has been misused by government employees for first-class travel tickets, fancy hotels, massages, personal expenses. This is money that was designated to be spent by government employees for the benefit of the poor. You cannot find a more egregious example. I got to tell you, I'm so sick and tired of hearing scandal after scandal after scandal burst open here. You know what the government reminds me of? It's not just the Obama administration, by the way. The same with the Bush administration. But this one is, these guys have a whole different level of it. But it reminds me of I saw a video not so long ago about a whale that had been beached on the shore, on the sand. And this whale had died, and it was just laying there. And, of course, it's huge. It's the size of a bus, right? And it had lain there and lain there and lain there. Of course, nobody can move it. It's a whale. I mean, it's heavy. It's big. And they couldn't get it back out into the water, and they didn't know what to do with it. And suddenly this thing just exploded from, the gas building up inside of it. And that's what this reminds me of, is the stench of a corrupted corpse that is exploding. The problem is that it's exploding all over us. I got to tell you, America, this is really where we have gone, and where we are right now is beyond comprehension or explanation. On Monday, Representative Luis Gutierrez from Illinois, he suggested that until Congress passes sweeping amnesty legislation, which of course there's no guarantee of, quote, every institution in America should find ways to ignore or work around federal immigration laws. He also said that President Barack Obama's Deferred Action Program was the first step in implementing more amnesty. So I guess I have a question. Is Representative Gutierrez saying that he's issuing a hunting permit on himself? I mean, that's what it sounds like, because I don't know. Is Gutierrez telling us that to work around the law, that laws don't matter? I mean, is he telling us to work around the law that prohibits people from removing him from office? I mean, a law is a law, right? Or isn't it? Is Gutierrez saying that anyone can break a law they don't agree with until a new one that's better is passed? Is that what Mr. Gutierrez is saying? Sounds like it. Is he saying that he's issuing a permit, a capture and not release permit on him? Because there are laws that prohibit that. But apparently, he feels like any law that he doesn't agree with, it's wide open to violation. I mean, he said it on the record. He was testifying in a Senate subcommittee hearing. He said every institution in America, including our military, must work around the inability of our federal government and the U.S. House of Representatives to fix our immigration system. He's calling for Americans and American companies and the military to break the law. And he gets away with it with impunity. Hypothetically, if I were to say, well, that gives us the right to go out there and get Mr. Gutierrez and remove him physically from office, I could be arrested for promoting an illegal activity. How is it that he can say it on the record and he's not in handcuffs doing a perp walk? Here is a lawmaker, by their own definition, that's what they call themselves, lawmaker, who's telling you, telling your company, telling your military, telling every institution in America, not my words, his, every institution in America must work around the inability of our federal government and the U.S. House of Representatives to fix the immigration system. Does that mean that every American should find ways to work around the inability of the citizens to get our federal government back under control? Is that what you're saying, Mr. Gutierrez? Because I would assume that your other 534 colleagues up in the House and the Senate would not approve of your issuing a permit on them. Clarify for me, please, Mr. Gutierrez. Are you telling me that no law matters, or only the laws that matter are the ones that you choose? Which is it? I mean, we need to understand. We have to have a better handle here. Does the rule of law exist, or does the rule of law exist only for us peasantry? While you elitists and you statists and you oligarchs sit up there and violate them at will, with impunity, with immunity. I mean, American soldiers and veterans are dying. The IRS is violating the law left and right. Fast and Furious, we still don't have answers for. The Attorney General breaks the law at will. The president lies to the American people over and over and over and over repeatedly. Is there a rule of law? Or is there not? I mean, I think we have a right to know. Meanwhile, just for driving down the road with $10,000 in your car, you can have it snatched without charges, without a conviction, because a police officer says, I suspect that you might have gotten this money in some illegal activity. And it's up to me now to then go to court to get it back. I mean, are we living in the days of the sheriff of Nottingham, where state officials, the king's men, can come and do as they please, and yet the average peasant can't take a squirrel to feed his family because it's the king's squirrel? Is that where we are, Mr. Gutierrez? I mean, Mr. Gutierrez, please explain to me and quantify for me exactly how you approve of 36,000 illegal immigrants being released back into the street after having committed violent crime against your own or your own alleged constituents. And I use the word alleged because clearly you don't represent them. You represent a foreign government, a foreign people. You don't represent the people of Illinois. You're calling for them to be subjugated under a foreign people. Of course I want to be humane, but I don't want to be inhumane to Americans while I'm being humane to people who I owe no allegiance to. There's a difference there. I get it that you're of Hispanic origin, but that should not betray your loyalty and your oath to your nation. How dare you? This kind of behavior is why our nation is coming apart, and no one has any morals. No one has any boundaries. No one has any limits. Because we look and we see it happening around us with our own alleged lawmakers who violate and break the law at will. How are we to act? If the example set forth for us by our alleged representatives breaks the law at every turn with immunity and impunity, what is the example we should take from that? I'd like to know how the other 534 members of Congress feel about Representative Gutierrez telling Americans to break the law until we can get a constitutional amendment to rein in federal government. That's what he's saying. So what we're saying is, great, we're going to go on strike. We're not going to pay our taxes. We're not going to go out there and participate. We're going to break any law we want. We want to feed cattle on desert scrub. We're not going to pay our taxes. We might even come looking for you. Is that acceptable, Mr. Gutierrez? Is that what you're saying? Please clarify for us, because we need to know. We need direction from our leaders. We need to understand what our lawmakers mean when they pass a law. We need to understand the boundaries that our lawmakers have given us. And we need to understand, do our lawmakers obligate themselves to be protected and defended within those same boundaries, or are those boundaries only for us? Please quantify for us, Mr. Gutierrez. I mean, I think we, the 14 million of us that aren't part of your little clique, are entitled to know. Where do the boundaries lie? I mean, you opened this door, Mr. Gutierrez, so please clarify for us and explain to us uneducated, unwashed masses what you mean when you say break the law. You said it, I didn't. I'm just asking you to engage in a conversation of logic and reason so that we all understand. Don't we have a right to know where the boundaries are so that we don't violate them? Don't we have a right to know? I mean, a law that people aren't aware of and don't know is a crime. I mean, you could turn around and make it a crime tomorrow morning to eat bread. And every American by lunchtime will become a felon. Especially if you don't tell us that you've passed the new bread felony law. You see, Mr. Gutierrez, you may think that everybody's on the same level as you, but we're not. We're just the unwashed, unintelligent, distracted masses. So we need your wisdom. We need you to shed light. Be an oracle for us. Help us understand what the rules are that you have set forth so that we may play by the rules you've laid out. If what you're saying is that we should all violate the law until a better law comes along that may or may not ever come along, I mean, in that case, I don't know, maybe I should go out and rob a bank until, and my claim to the judge as I'm held before him in handcuffs and shackles should be, Your Honor, I was waiting for them to make this legal. And following Mr. Gutierrez's advice, I went out and did what I felt was the right thing to do because my family needed to eat. I needed a new Xbox. My iPhone is getting worn. And I'm waiting for the U.S. House of Representatives and the federal government to fix the poverty system. I mean, I'm following what Mr. Gutierrez told me to do. I'll substitute the word person for institution. Every person in America, including our military, must, he ordered me to, sir, must work around the inability of our federal government and the U.S. House of Representatives to fix our no jobs, our poverty system. I mean, Mr. Gutierrez told me to do whatever I've got to do to work around the inability of the federal government to provide for the jobs that they've been promising us. So I needed the money. Mr. Gutierrez told me to do this. He's my superior. He claims to be. He says he is. He ordered me to. He acts like he is. Well, you can't tell me, Your Honor, that he works for me because he ignores everything I tell him. He doesn't care. When I tell him to stop doing something, he does it anyway. He doesn't work for me, Your Honor. I work for him. You've been listening to America's Voice Now. When we come back, we're going to talk about VA-run death panels of lazy and corrupt murderers of their countrymen. I don't want another hearing. I don't even want a perp walk. I want a trial and I want executions. Murder is murder, ladies and gentlemen. And because you're too lazy to get off your fat butt to actually go and see a patient, I have no sympathy for you. We'll be right back. I don't get it. Seems like Mr. Gutierrez is in good company up there. The Department of Labor came out the other day and said, we need to fix our broken immigration system to encourage more highly educated foreign-born workers to come to the United States. If we are to compete in a global economy, we must continue to attract and retain the world's brightest minds. I thought we had those right here, Mr. Liu. This was Deputy Secretary of Labor Chris Liu. He works for the U.S. Department of Labor. I want you to hear his statement again, and then I'm going to read you his mission statement for his agency. We also need to fix our broken immigration system to encourage more highly educated foreign-born workers to come to the United States. If we are to compete in a global economy, we must continue to attract and retain the world's brightest minds. Too many foreign students, many from Asian countries, come to the United States to further their education, but most return home when they cannot obtain a green card or immigrant visa. As part of President Obama's immigration reform, he has called for stapling green cards directly to the diplomas of foreign students engaged in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics fields. Sounds right? Except for one problem. The mission statement of the U.S. Department of Labor reads as follows: to foster, promote, and develop. I'm going to read it a couple of times because I really want you to get this. To foster, promote, and develop the welfare of wage earners, job seekers, and retirees of the United States. Improve working conditions, advance opportunities for profitable employment, and assure work-related benefits and rights. All right. Anyone who understands sentence construction understands that the core concept of this statement is to promote and foster and develop the welfare of wage earners, job seekers, and retirees of the United States. Not Mexico, not Asia, not China, not Russia, not Thailand, not Bangkok, not Hong Kong, not Mexico, not Honduras, not Argentina, not Brazil, not Iceland, not France, Britain, England, Lithuania. So the next obvious question is, whose side is Mr. Liu on? 50 million Americans don't have jobs. 50 million. There's only 150 million in the workforce. 1/3 of us are out of work. And Mr. Liu, you're complaining to us about foreign students who can't get a green card? The only global economy is apparently one in your mind, you knuckle-headed piece of human excrement. Meanwhile, at the VA, patients are committing suicide as they sit on the wait list, knowing that they're dying and they can't get help. They're dying of physical and mental ailments, which they cannot gain assistance and help for because they're prohibited from going to a general medical hospital that a non-civilian or a non-veteran would go to. Dr. Margaret Moxness, she was employed in Huntington, Virginia's medical center in Charleston from 2008 to 2010. She's a psychiatrist. She lost touch with patients and claims that they were compassionless. The VA administrators lost touch with the patients. They don't really experience what the doctors and nurses are experiencing, which is the suffering and the pain and the death. She says that when she complained to her supervisors, it was harmful to avoid or only offer partial treatment to these people, that she was functionally silenced. Then they cut her out. Her story is not unusual. Rush Limbaugh came out yesterday and said, you must make it clear. The Veterans Hospital Death Panel is a preview of life under Obamacare. And I have no doubt. Because the truth is that what we see right now is a panel that punishes whistleblowers, a panel that will not allow patients to be seen. The average doctor, the average orthopedist, the average surgeon sees more patients in one day than a VA doctor sees in more than a week. Do you know why? Because a doctor in private practice has an obligation to earn enough money to pay the bills. But a doctor who works for the Veterans Administration, they're on a salary. Now, they're going to try and tell us that, well, we made sure that we had so-and-so resign. Petzel is his name. He was due to resign this month. Retire. And they put him on administrative leave with pay. Somewhere upwards of 100 Americans that we now know about are dead. Patients who died of colon cancer while waiting for a doctor to say, come on in and let's take a look at you. The Project on Government Oversight, also known as POGO, and the Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America, that's IFVA, they have recently unveiled an encrypted web submission form that can be sent to them by whistleblowers, because the truth is that the panels at the VA are notorious for punishing and persecuting whistleblowers. Notorious. Joe Newman, the director of communications for POGO, says the groups are looking for systematic problems, and they've received already, as of Monday morning, 310 submissions. The majority of the reports are thus far from veterans and members of the public, and less than 10% are from employees. But they did get something less than 10% from VA employees. According to three legal experts, if there is such a thing, blowing the whistle with the help of interested nonprofits is perfectly legal. All three of these attorneys specialize in whistleblowing law. This is an article in U.S. News and Report, or usnews.com. And using a third party to snitch on bad behavior may be well worth considering. In short, VA employees can still be protected if they go to nonprofits or the press rather than the agency itself. This is particularly so when there has been a pattern of unresponsiveness. Now, Steve Cohen, that was Cornell law professor Stuart Schwab. Stephen Cohn, the executive director of the National Whistleblower Center, knows the risks of internal reporting. He's representing a surgeon who blew the whistle on shocking safety violations at a VA hospital in Dallas 2 years ago. The surgeon wrote a detailed memo to superiors noting that colleagues nearly had him remove the wrong kidney, and that they had another instance where they presented a guy for surgery who was too senile to provide the informed consent. But he was the one who was fired, even after an admission of the errors from the doctor's boss himself. They admitted their mistake, but they fired him anyway. Is that any way to treat the righteous guy who comes forth? See, here's the problem, and here's what I would like to suggest and recommend. And I'll do a little bit more homework and see if I can't try to figure out how we can get a hold of these attorneys. But what I'd like to suggest is that along the lines of the ombudsman, the civilian ombudsman program, if you recall, I talked about that before. And what the civilian ombudsman program is essentially this. We place individuals inside of every federal agency, every federal department, every federal bathroom, if need be, who has 100% full authority to investigate anything and everyone within that group or agency or department. And, moreover, they're not paid by government and they owe no allegiance to government, and they report directly back to us, the citizenry, via a website on a routine basis. Maybe it's quarterly or monthly or whatever the case may be. And there, what we now do is make sure that this Drudge Report-like website that just has headlines on it and a report. So-and-so, the civilian ombudsman for the Department of the Interior, or the guy from the USDA, or another guy from the Department of the Navy, or another guy from the ATF, or another guy from the EPA. They found the following problems and bulletized them. Let the press then take that information and do their job as investigative, dare I say the word, investigative journalists. Now they've got the lead, the hot one. Wouldn't it be wonderful if a civilian ombudsman put out there in the newspaper or put out there on the ombudsman website that turns out that he's found out the head of the EPA is using private email outside of the federal government's email system in an attempt to try to hide her activities and behavior? Wouldn't it be nice to know that a civilian ombudsman could say, the following VA hospital has been playing games with the waiting lists, and we've got patients that have been waiting for months and are dying of cancer because they can't get a meeting with their doctor. And here's the name of the VA clinic. And the following morning, the doctors and the administrators would show up, and there would be 200 members of the press there with microphones saying, please, sir, explain to us what's going on here at the VA. The ombudsman gave us the news. Please, sir, tell us how many patients have died. Who's responsible? Who signed off? Where's the paperwork? I filed the Freedom of Information Act this morning. The press would have no reason to go forth and say, we didn't know about that. Americans would be better off knowing that somebody was watching out for our interest. And I would represent that the ombudsman program would answer the question. Quis custodiet ipsos custodes. Who will watch the watchers? Now I'd like to recommend and suggest that POGO and the Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America show us how to create a web submission form. Let's create a not-for-profit organization for every federal agency. EPAWatchdog.org, USDA Watchdog.org, Department of the Interior Watchdog.org. Put up a web submission form, and let's let the whistleblowers begin to give us the inside story. That, combined with a special civilian ombudsman, not responsible or reporting back to any government agency, not reporting to Congress, not getting paid by the government that it's supposed to be watching out for, and a collective group who will then make sure that they are watching out for each other and holding each other accountable. What do you mean, Sam? I'm a member of this 4-panel group that watches over the EPA, and don't tell me that you didn't know about this because I just found an email from you. You're supposed to be a watchdog. You're out of the ombudsman program. They should be retirees. Why not? Why not? Because they don't have career goals. That's why. Their expenses should be paid, and they should be paid a very nominal amount of money by a not-for-profit organization that will enable them to get in there with a shovel and dig through the mountains of excrement to find out who's doing the dirty and then expose them publicly. Liability, you say? Well, wait a minute. Stop right there. Then let's set a rule that says, like the House floor and the Senate floor, you can say anything you want about anyone in public service, and you cannot be held liable or slanderous for it. Isn't that how Harry Reid got out there and told us that Mitt Romney hadn't paid his taxes, and a little bird had landed on Harry's shoulder and told him so? It all turned out to be lies later. But Harry couldn't be held accountable because, well, he was on the Senate floor when he said it. Obama knew back in 2008 that there was a problem. This started under Bush, who was also a traitor, cut his own country's throat, betrayed his own veterans, that he stood there and said he did this and that and he was such a great guy. It started with him. Obama came in 2008 and swore he was going to fix it. He swore he would. He addressed the issue himself. So how is it now? He turns around and says, I read about it in the papers like you. By the way, this has got to be the most uninformed president that we've ever had. You know, here's the problem, folks. Somebody wrote on our Facebook page the other day, Rob Robinson said this, and we were talking about the Jay Carney lies about the scandal of not knowing about the VA administration and what was happening. And he said, I can already see a minimum of a 1-week lag between when a story breaks on the internet and when mainstream media, the Ministry of Propaganda, reports it for the first time. Sometimes it's as much as 2 weeks. Now here comes Jay Carnival Carney, who tries to tell us that it took a story on lamestream media for government to know that corruption was going on at a relatively low level, read with lots of people in increasingly higher levels of authority between the level it was happening at and the president, including the Secretary of Veterans Affairs, whom, interestingly enough, sustained a foot injury in the Vietnam War. He goes on to say, I wonder if that's code for intentionally shot himself in the foot, because the way he's running the VA displays a high level of expertise in doing just that. I mean, let's face it, folks. Aren't supervisors, assistant managers, assistant section chiefs, assistant directors, and directors supposed to be continuously directly managing their people to make sure they're doing their jobs and not slacking, stealing, or abusing privileges? Isn't each level of authority supposed to be responsible for the actions or misactions, as the case may be, of their subordinates? Isn't that why they're in a position of trust in the first place? Seems to me that if you agree with any of that, then you have to agree that the entire VA infrastructure is seriously contaminated at a systemic level. The president had to notice a problem? Really? Where were all the people in between the hospital and POTUS, whose specific job is, or should be, to identify problems before they get noticed by a news station, much less the President of the United States, weeks later at that? How can this not be viewed as willful and intentional? Let's also not forget that Shinseki was the 34th United States Chief of Staff, a position he held for not less than 4 years, after his 1 year as Deputy ACS, which was probably spent grooming him for the ACS position. This on top of dozens of commands in the Army, all considered stepping stone assignments, not to mention overall command of SOFOR in Bosnia-Herzegovina, which was apparently now called a war. With a history like that, you'd expect the man to know how to keep a large, spread-out command functioning efficiently to go to war. Yet he can't even manage a civilian-based, veteran-staffed, essentially private-run corporation under no threat of Title X activation. And now, apparently, the President of the United States has to do Mr. Shinseki's job. And yet, Shinseki still has his job. See, the truth of the matter is, America, we've reached the point, and we're well over it, of no return. I did post an article up there about rogue government prepares for a heated conflict as historical cycles point to a coming clash. And the image up there is the Tyranny Bunch on a play off of the old Brady Bunch. I encourage you to read it. The article is worth the read. It offers a historical look at the self-destructive discord that happens when governments lose control of their own creations. And in our case, the Frankenstein monster has certainly escaped from the castle, and it's wreaking havoc, raping and pillaging the village. But you see, in their attempt to cover up their guilt and their malfeasance for creating the monster in the first place and feeding it and caring for it in some misguided, I don't even understand what the thought process it was for that, governments usually then compound the problem by causing more damage than the monster, all in their attempt to cover it up. And guess who pays? The villagers, every single time without fail. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, the Obamacare new rules that bail out the insurance companies. Here we go again. You know, if it ain't one thing, it's another with this administration. But I got to tell you, we've gone so far down the road here of tyranny that it's time for Americans to stand up and say we've had enough. By the way, for the record, before you get too crazy, this HIPAA release form, which I obtained yesterday by I took someone to the doctor's office, and they were asked to sign this HIPAA form, which has now become a 5-page diatribe. And we're going to go over it in depth when I get a couple more of them, because you're waiving your rights, including for investigation, which is all a direct result of Obamacare. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, by the way, a question for you guys, or a point for you guys. Yesterday, AmericanResumeService.com, that's AmericanResumeService.com, came out and said, at my appeal for corporations to donate a product or a service that they offer, they've agreed to offer their $200 resume creation package for anyone that so chooses. They'll charge you $100, and 100% of that donation will go to America's Voice Now. The website is AmericanResumeService.com. And I will strongly encourage you to participate in that. By the way, I happen to have seen a number of the resumes that have come off of that service, and they are absolutely outstanding. So, if you are in need of a resume or a resume rewrite and a tune-up for $100 for a $200 package, of which they're going to donate the whole $100 to AVN, you can get your problem solved. AmericanResumeService.com. Please make sure that you visit that website. There's phone numbers there as well. Visit our friends over at BatteryStation.com and make sure that you work with them. AtlasSurvivalShelters.com, SurvivalByPreparedness.com. We'll be back in just a moment.
It's It's about the restoration of our republic. We want to educate, encourage, enable the power. We stand for integrity, honesty, self-reliance, self-defense, and most importantly, no compromise on our foundational principles. This is America's Voice Now.
Find America's Voice Now on Facebook and at americasvoicenow.org. Here's Michael Evans.
All right, we're back. Thank you guys for joining with us this morning. You're listening to America's Voice Now. My name is Mike Evans. I'm the host here. If you're just joining us, you're stepping in halfway through our program. We're in our third segment, which will cover Obamacare's new rules that bail out insurance companies. I mean, is there any kind of news that comes out of this government these days that's good? It's just endless. It's so depressing and so demoralizing. And it's meant to be that way. As I opened up the show this morning, I explained to you that the premise of all of this is to keep you off balance, to keep you unsure, unsteady, unstable. It's like the reason why SWAT teams throw flashbangs into a room, to disorient you. The noise and the flash and the bang and the concussion, they get you off balance. And while you're floundering for a moment, trying to get your senses, they come in and shoot you. Kind of an interesting analogy there, isn't it? Federal flashbangs. Before we get into this segment about how the Obama administration is again unilaterally acting outside of congressional authority to create rules that you will pay for to bail out these insurance companies who are not going to stand for getting their butts handed to them fiscally. I want to bring 2 points out to you. One, yesterday I expressed to you that we are financially in the red again. I mean, I bail it out every month. I know, some of you are probably new to this program. You don't know, but I've been doing this for 3 years. And every month I make up the shortfall on what the costs are under this program. No, I've never been paid. I probably never will be paid because everybody tries to keep this show from becoming successful. YouTube shuts my videos down. They lock them off. They reduce the viewer numbers. Facebook deletes our posts and texts. I mean, I get it. But we do educate and inform a lot of people. There's some 5,000 or 6,000 people a month that visit America's Voice Now website. And the program, this program, putting it up on a radio station, keeping the website up, all of that stuff costs money. And I pay the difference out of my pocket every month. I've asked if you guys can contribute and participate and support that effort. And, there are some people that consistently make a small donation every month. There are some people that have actually stepped forward over time and actually made a larger donation and been very generous about it. But the bills continue on. Well, American Resume Service came out yesterday and said, they gave me a call after the program and said, we will do our $200 resume package for $100 for your listenership and only for your listenership. And to make matters even more valuable, we're going to donate that $100 to America's Voice Now. And we're going to do it for 20 packages, 20 of these resume packages. That was a very, very generous and gracious gift, and I'm humbled and I'm touched. If you are in need of a resume, or a family member is, here's an opportunity for you to get a professional resume service done that has a $200 value to it that you can get for $100, and you're going to, on top of that, know that the entire $100 is going to be dedicated and taken out to America's Voice Now. This program will be the beneficiary of that. Ladies and gentlemen, it doesn't get any better than that. It's a triple win. A triple win. You can go to AmericanResumeService.com. That's AmericanResumeService.com. There's phone numbers on there where you can call if any questions that you have. You can use PayPal to pay for the service, or they can accept checks or money orders, or however you guys all work it out. But I just thought that was a very, very gracious and generous offer, and I would strongly encourage you to, if you're in need of a resume or a resume tune-up, to take advantage of it. There is also a concealed carry class individual who stepped up and said that he will provide concealed carry classes and make the entire the cost of the $50 for that, and make sure that money is dedicated and donated to AVN. So if you're in the Missouri area, in the south central Missouri area, and you'd like to get your concealed carry permit, now that the nicer weather is here, this is he's certified in every county in the state to do concealed carry training and classes, and the cost is $50. That entire $50 will be donated to America's Voice Now, and he'll hold a number of classes. If that's something you're interested in, please send me an email to mike@americasvoicenow.org. That's mike@americasvoicenow.org, and make sure that you put in their CCW class, and we'll make sure that we get that set up for you. I'll give you the information. Okay, so let me give you the phone number for him, by the way. It's 417-274-1155. That's 417-274-1155. And he's got programs where he'll run the classes for smaller groups of people or larger groups, depending on what it is. So anyway, take advantage of those offers, and you'll help yourself while helping us. And you can't go wrong with that, folks. I know money's tight. The Obama administration rule allows for increased insurance bailouts. And on Friday, they've issued a new ruling that will lead the government to give billions of taxpayer dollars to the already well-floated health insurance companies involved in Obamacare health exchanges. Folks, we just spent $5 billion on state websites that don't work. We spent well over $1 billion on a federal website that still doesn't work. We have a contract out there for $1.25 billion that was given to a British company, not even an American company, that has 4 data centers around the country to process paper applications because the $1 billion federal website and the $5 billion state websites don't work. And so they gave this contract to a British company that's hired 3,700 Americans to sit at their computers and do nothing. They stare at their computers all day long. There's no applications to process because America doesn't want any part of Obamacare. And now we're going to dedicate billions more to bail out the insurance companies because the entire ill-conceived plan is coming back to bite. The rule is part of an effort by the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid to address fears. These aren't guarantees now. This is just fears that Obamacare insurance companies will suffer huge losses because of the cost of care of the high numbers of sick enrollees. And they will not be able to offset payments from the healthy enrollees who are smart enough to opt out and not participate in this boondoggle. Town Hall reported in December that there was something out there called a risk corridor. Now, you've heard that term before because, for the last 2 quarters we've been talking about this. But the risk corridor provisions in Obamacare allow the federal government to give the health insurance companies a taxpayer bailout at the cost of providing care for those insured through Obamacare. And this program was created to help make sure that the insurance companies wouldn't raise their costs and therefore scuttle the whole thing and cause it to go into a death spiral. So rather than raise the cost and get the money out of the insured, what they're going to do is hide it by splitting it amongst everybody in the nation. Now, of course, we've gotten word from the Obama administration that these risk corridors aren't going to cost America anything. That's what they said about Obamacare in the first place. And so far, we know that it's cost us at least $5 billion for state websites that are having to be dismantled and rebuilt because not a single one of them can sign up a single person. We spent over $1 billion, $600 million initially, and another $400+ million fixing the federal site. We just issued a $1.25 billion contract to a company in England to process non-existent applications. The federal government has spent $500 million on television advertisements. So we're already into this for damn near, $8 or $9 billion that we know of that we can directly point to. And it's not going to cost the American taxpayer anything? I'm so tired of being lied to, and so blatantly and boldly. I mean, who, can he at this point actually believe any of this? If these people tell you that it's daylight outside, you got to walk over to the window, crack the shades, and pull back the curtain to verify it, because they would lie about even that. CMS has issued guidance in the past promising that if the money collected from successful insurers wasn't enough to cover all the payments due to the struggling ones, payments would be reduced and shortfalls made up for in the following year. But the insurance companies came out and said, hey, wait a second, you're forgetting to take into account that these hits are going to be bigger than even you're anticipating. Of course they are, because they sold us a bill of goods. It's the little old lady only drove it on Sundays mantra. And America bought it hook, line, and sinker from the number one used car and, frankly, firearms gun salesman in the nation, President Barack Hussein Obama. So basically, to alleviate these concerns, federal regulations allow the insurers access to bailout funds after they spend $60,000 on a single individual. So here's how it works. So you go to the doctor, they say, yeah, you got cancer. This is your second time for cancer because you're one of the ones who are insured under the premise that no pre-existing condition, right? So you spend your treatment cost $120,000. It used to be after the first $60,000 they would go back to the federal government and say, hey, you owe us $60,000 to cover this because it cost us $120,000 and we spent $60,000 and you owe us the other $60,000. But now they actually reduced it down to $45,000. Well, to be perfectly blunt, folks, $45,000 doesn't go far in a medical scenario today. You can go into the hospital overnight and get a stent put in your chest, and there's $45,000 right there. One single stent for someone who's at risk, and they do an angioplasty. They go up through your arm or your groin. They go in there and they find the artery that's clogged. They put that little Chinese handcuff thing in there. They spread it open. It holds the artery open. $40,000-$50,000, no problem. One night. Go in at noon. You're out by noon the next day. $50,000, no sweat. HHS says they have the power to use taxpayer money to reimburse these insurance companies up to 80% of the additional costs in the first 3 years that the law exists. Based on what? Isn't every spending bill supposed to begin in the House? Where did the House say, here's my checkbook. There's no limits on it. You can write a check to whomever you want, wherever you want, whenever you want, for any amount that you like, and you don't owe us any explanation. Don't even bother to write the balances in there and keep the ledger, because it doesn't really matter. The American for Prosperity website goes on to explain it. If the cost of insuring individuals under the ACA, the Affordable Care Act, is 3% higher than estimated, insurance companies received a 50% taxpayer reimbursement of the difference. If the cost of the ACA is of the treatment is 8% higher than estimated, which is significantly more a likely outcome, insurance companies receive an 80% taxpayer reimbursement. This bailout of insurance companies can end up costing taxpayers billions of dollars. I beg to differ. It's not going to be in the billions, ladies and gentlemen. Now, of course, in December 2nd, the Federal Register, the place where all the treason in the United States of America takes place, because this is where they write the rules and publish them. The Federal Register is tens of thousands of pages of treason and tyranny and oppression and abusive dictatorial mandates that not a single person who's publishing them, writing them, or creates them has a right constitutionally to even create. And in it, they acknowledge that insurers have valid concerns when they observe they're going to be saddled with sicker customers that cost more money. Well, no kidding. We all told them that in the first place. That's why it should have never been passed. You see, here's the problem, and here's the dichotomy that's associated with this. A group of senators have come out, and they're trying to pass this Obamacare Taxpayer Bailout Prevention Act. But they're going to play right into the administration's hands. Because if they block the bailouts, then what's going to happen is the administration is gleefully going to rub their hands together, and they're going to do what they've wanted to do all along, which is move to a single-payer system. And then everybody gets the VA clinic. That's the goal. That's always been the goal, along with complete, total access to all of your personal information, your healthcare information, all of your information related to your finances, everything about your job. I'm going to just read you something that bothers the snot out of me. I took a friend to a doctor the other day, and under this HIPAA form that's now 5 pages, it says, permitted required uses and disclosures that can be made without your consent. Without your consent. Without your authorization or your opportunity to object. Listen to what they are. We may use or disclose your protected health information in the following situations. Without your consent or authorization. These situations include, quote, required by law. We may use or disclose your protected health information to the extent that the use or disclosure is required by law. The use or disclosure will be made in compliance with the law and will be limited to the relevant requirements of the law. You will be notified, as required by law, of any such use or disclosure. Does that sound like it was written by a little fascist or what? Public health. We may disclose your protected health information. This is supposed to be the HIPAA protection, right? But they're living themselves loopholes, folks, big enough for you to drive the state of Texas through. We may disclose your protected health information for public health activities and purposes to a public health authority, who? That is permitted by law. You know, whose law? What law? Where was the law written? I want to see the author. I want to see the argument that was made about it. I want to see the open discussion. I want to hear it on C-SPAN. I want to see it on CNN. We may disclose your protected health information for public health activities and purposes to a public health authority that is permitted by law to collect or receive the information. The disclosure will be made for the purpose of controlling disease, injury, or disability. We may also disclose your protected health information if directed by the public health authority to a foreign government agency that is collaborating with the public health authority. All right, so you know what they tell you? Their argument will be, well, sure, if it turns out that you've got SARS or MERS or AIDS or banana republicitis, we want to make sure that we can spread that around with all third world countries and foreign nations so that we can protect them from getting banana republicitis with you. But the real truth is, I understand it when you get banana republicitis. I understand when you're a public health threat because you carry a communicable disease. But it doesn't say in here it's only limited to communicable disease. You know why? Because the next segment says communicable disease. We may disclose your protected health information if authorized by law. What constitutes the prior public health statement? We don't know. Public health of what? I mean, public health could be anything, from the fact that you didn't wipe your butt right. We may disclose your protected health information, if authorized by law, to a person who may have been exposed to a communicable disease or may otherwise be at risk of contracting or spreading the disease or condition. Health oversight. Here's the good one. Here's the one. Here's the holy grail for fascism. Health oversight. Oversight. What in this government is oversought? We may disclose protected health information to a health oversight agency for activities. Boy, that's narrow as the Mississippi River. For activities authorized by law, such as audits, investigations, and inspections. Of whom? Us? Why are you investigating us? How about the thousands of VA doctors who won't see patients? Oversight agencies seeking this information include government agencies that oversee the healthcare system. Is there any of those? Government benefit programs, other government regulatory programs, and civil rights laws. You see, if you go to your doctor and you sign this HIPAA waiver, you're a fool. And guess what? They have to treat you anyway. Don't sign the HIPAA waiver form. I'm going to do an entire program about this. I can't take it today. I wanted you to hear that. But I'm going to tell you something, ladies and gentlemen. Do not sign the HIPAA form and look that person right in the eye, no matter how much crap they give you, and say, are you telling me you're not going to treat me because I refuse to sign this form? Don't take it. You are not required by law to sign the form. How's that? You're waiving your right. That means you have an option. A waiver that's not done at the point of a gun is a waiver. A waiver done at the point of a gun is not a waiver. That's an order. And there's a big difference. Ladies and gentlemen, aren't you tired of treason yet? Oh, I know, the nice girl behind the counter at the doctor's office, she doesn't know any better. I don't know, this is just what I'm told to do. That's what they said to the guy who sat there with the list in front of him and said, Rubenstein, Lipschitz. Yeah. You, that line. You, that line. Schnell, schnell. We'll be right back. And then we're going to discuss the money designated for the poor was used for government employees to get first-class tickets and massages. Designated for the poor. And they say, no liability, wasn't taxpayer money. America, if you don't see the insanity that has infected this nation like a viral disease, I can't help you. The truth is, this is insane. There's an article out there on Reason this morning that said Obamacare has granted 1 million incorrect health insurance waiver subsidies. So there were only 8 million people signed up. Turns out only about 3 million actually paid. And out of that, most of those people already had insurance before this whole thing came along, and now they're issuing improper subsidies for up to 1 million of them. The system is so ripe for fraud and abuse, it may well go down in the annals of history as the number one method for the government to lose taxpayer money. It's even bigger than TARP and the IRS and the Pentagon and the wars and all that other nonsense. Obamacare will bankrupt the nation publicly. Well, we're already bankrupt, but this will make it clear that, even the dyslexic accountants at OMB can figure it out. Washington Examiner's got an article out there this morning. Wait until you hear this one. Federal employees and a contractor diverted more than $1 million of charitable donations that were contributions that were made for charity to poor. And they spent it on themselves. People, this isn't just criminal. This is above and beyond criminal. They spent it on themselves for in-office massages, meals at every meeting, luxuries, and unnecessary expenses. They called themselves volunteers and said they needed motivation to help the less fortunate, even though 41 of them were federal workers and were being paid for full-time salaries. They weren't volunteers. They were being paid. And this is just one local chapter of the government's annual workplace charity drive, the Combined Federal Campaign. They got there a day early, and they stayed a day late for the annual training, all on the donations that were made in New Orleans and Las Vegas. They paid for room service. They watched pay-per-view movies, all of it with donated monies. Then they defended their right to do so when they were questioned by auditors. Wait till you hear this. They claimed that the restrictions on spending for things that they bought, like their, the extra days in the hotel, first-class flights, first class, that it didn't apply to donated funds because it wasn't taxpayer money that was involved. So there were no rules to apply to them. Apparently, they tutelaged under Luis Gutierrez. The whole time they were working for on the Combined Federal Campaign, which is, Combined Federal Campaign. What the heck does that mean? Who even heard of this thing? You see, that's the problem, ladies and gentlemen. There are thousands of these little things out there. But they were working on the CFC full time. They were loaner executives, right? And so they were loaners from other government jobs who received full-time government salaries while they were on loan as volunteers. This kind of doublespeak is exactly what Ayn Rand and in 1984 told us was happening. I'm a volunteer. What I don't tell you, in the interest of public and full disclosure, is that I'm being paid by my employer to be a volunteer. That's not a volunteer. And by the way, while they were being paid to be volunteers, they weren't doing the work that they were being paid full-time to do. So it was a double whammy. The taxpayers got screwed every way but blued. You see, while you're volunteering for this effort and you're being paid to do your job, you're not doing your job. So all of that work is building up all the work I know, passing all the oppressive legislation and restrictions and rules and regulations that all the peons, pissants, and peasantry have to follow. So basically, the taxpayers were paying the bill because they weren't doing their paid job. The CFC is overseen by the Office of Personnel Management. And they have it broken up through these regional committees that are made up of government employees, overseeing other government employees, and everybody's in on the joke, but you! Each of these different committees, they contract with an outside not-for-profit. They contract with the outside not-for-profit to do most of the work, and they pay the expenses out of the donations. Federal agencies detail hundreds of employees from their regular duties to volunteer as CFC contractor offices, all at taxpayer expense. The largest regional chapter is the CFC for the National Capital Area, which contracted with Alexandria, Virginia-based nonprofit Global Impact. Global Impact offices occupy custom-built office space with wall-to-wall views of the Potomac River. On these walls are pictures of starving children in Africa juxtaposed against elaborate conference rooms and amenities like a gourmet kitchen. Global Impact has assets of more than $20 million, and according to their latest tax return, the same nonprofit also has the contract for another large CFC campaign, which covers members of the U.S. military on overseas deployments. In 2012, a scathing audit by OPM's Inspector General of Global Impact's work on the D.C. area contract was published. The nonprofit paid its then top executive, Renee Acosta, nearly $500,000 in salary to manage and manipulate all of this lie and excrement. 132 staffers ran the charity drive, including 41 loaned executives who collected federal salaries but worked out of the nonprofit office. The audit identified $764,000 plus in expenses that could have been put to better use for the campaigns, including they ordered or purchased a private box at the stadium where the Washington Nationals play. You know, they had to take a break from all their hard work. Jazz band costs at a leadership conference, a Mardi Gras tour, and a Washington by night tour for the loaned executives who work in Washington. Washington by night tour? What'd they all do? Get on a double-decker bus and be fed greasy, sleazy hamburgers? While a tour guide said, "That's the Capitol. That's the Washington Monument. That one over there is the White House. Oh, boy, aren't you excited and thrilled. Everybody get your camera ready." The audit reported that Global Impact, on top of that, was reimbursed for unreasonable, unallowable, or unsupported expenses of another $300,000. You see, we try to follow the rule of law here, which says that some people are alive only because it's illegal to kill them. And this is one of those instances. The expenses consisted of a torrent of petty expenses, including personal dry cleaning bills, gift shop purchases. So on your tour, you go in and you buy the little globe with the snow in it of the Washington Monument, and they billing that back? You got to be kidding me. How reprehensibly immature, elementary, childish, evil, and sadistic can you be? An awards banquet and the travel associated with it that was completely unrelated to the CFC program, and an $80 flower gift they bought for an employee. Some gift, huh? You know, talk about getting blood flowers. Those flowers had the blood of the alleged poor on them. I'll bet every damn one of these people that was involved in this was a Barack Obama supporter in 2008 and 2012. We're here to save the poor. We're going to fight for those poor right after we get done spending $1 million that we could have donated and made sure that some people who needed to eat have, just a cheeseburger or something. Global Impact held a 2-week training conference at hotels in the Georgetown section of D.C. That's the most expensive neighborhood in D.C., folks. You buy a condominium there or a townhouse there, it's in the millions of dollars. No, you don't get a yard. It's just a postage stamp. You don't need to cut it with a lawnmower. You just go out with a pair of scissors and you can clip, 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 clip. They flew their workers to conferences in other cities, including New Orleans, Orlando, and Las Vegas. I mean, let's not pick a place like, Bent Elbow, Wyoming. Let's pick a place where, we can make sure that we can gamble, watch some live entertainment, live the exciting life, maybe stay over a couple of extra days and visit Disney. Staff arrived a day early and stayed a day late after the conferences because they were involved in planning. Well, we have to plan the conference. That's a planning conference for the atrocities we're about to commit. They had to, quote, ensure timely presence at the start of the conference. I mean, I got to get here a day early just so that I'm not late. If your 60-year-old or your 9-year-old tried to pull this nonsense on you, you'd slap that kid silly. The auditors pointed out that the conference started in the afternoon. How can you be late for it? You could have got the morning commuter flight. And, quote, for days following the conference, we did not understand the justification that would warrant this. In other words, for the days they stayed after the conference, what are they saying? They don't want to be early getting back to work? Global Impact reimbursed one staffer $1,000 for driving from Washington, D.C. to the Orlando conference, which would necessarily allow his family to come along. A round-trip flight cost $230. But while he was in Orlando, he wanted to make sure he got a chance to take the family to Disneyland. And, of course, they stayed in a hotel that was paid for by the conference. We'll just get the kids one of those little fold-up beds or something. In addition to that, they justified or tried to justify in-office neck massages for the federal employees who were on loan as volunteers to alleviate their stress. These are their words, not mine, folks. This isn't reprehensible. Some people are alive just because it's illegal to kill them. Auditors flagged expenses like room service and movie rentals, even before the conference started, because, of course, they got there a day early so they wouldn't be late, so they all had to watch a couple of porn flicks while they were there. I mean, what else are we going to do to keep ourselves occupied while we're sitting here in this hotel? The auditors flagged the expenses. Global Impact insisted the expenses be allowed, even taking the unusual step of hiring a law firm to push back against the Inspector General in an effort to avoid having to pay for the bill themselves. Loaned executives are not campaign volunteers, the auditors repeatedly reminded Global Impact. They are federal employees who are temporarily assigned on a full-time basis to the CFC NCA and continue to receive their regular salary and benefits from their employing federal agencies during this time. Work related to the CFC is simply part of their official duty. Consequently, the argument that these federal employees need morale boosters because they serve without compensation doesn't carry any merit. The employees who were being paid to do charity work as volunteers frequently spent money thanking and rewarding each other, such as $51 per person appreciation luncheons that were both unreasonable and excessive, according to the auditor. In addition to being redundant, since the campaign also held a finale event where campaign workers were again recognized and rewarded, probably with plaques bought with our money, or at least money that was designated to go to the poor. These are people who are making 135% of what their public sector friends make, or private sector friends make, in the same exact job function, and they get a pension, and they've got the best health care in the nation. Why is everybody a king and nobody's a subject when it comes to the federal government? That wasn't all. There were multiple problems with the local federal coordinating committee. The Board of Federal Employees is supposed to be overseeing this. No kidding. I mean, that's the deal, folks. Everybody's in on the joke except for you and me. Quote, this is from the auditor. Expenses revealed a culture within the LFCC and Global Impact where the charging of meals as part of the normal course of business was considered to be an acceptable expense to the campaign. Every dollar spent on a bureaucrat's dinner was one that didn't go to the charity for which it was intended. The campaign has taken the position that any event where campaign business is conducted or where campaign staff is involved constitutes a campaign event, the expenses of which are chargeable to the campaign. The Office of Inspector General finds this approach to the administration of a campaign extremely disturbing and suspects that most donors would as well. This is an example of Global Impact's disturbing tendency to interpret the OPM CFC regulations in a manner that minimizes accountability. The Secret Service demanded that back in 2010, this is a separate report on a criminal investigation, the Secret Service determined that a Global Impact employee was using a donor's checkbook to sell their personal financial information to a Detroit-based violent crime ring that stole identities. The ring's hackers would drain the donor's bank account and wire the Global Impact employee a cut of the stolen money. These are the people that are sacrificing for the sake of those poor, helpless, hapless, desperate people, the unwashed masses.
Lovey, could you bring the checkbook, please? We'd like to make sure that we give this person something for lunch.
The Secret Service reported the Global Impact employee never faced any criminal consequence and told investigators she did it because she needed the money to help support her child. You think that would be a legitimate excuse for you when you went to court and stood before the judge? Really? Acosta, that was the woman who was making $500,000 running this little shindig. She's no longer at the helm, but she received a $150,000 bonus well after the auditors brought out all of this information. You see, this is not unusual, ladies and gentlemen. I'm pointing it out and I'm reading you this because this is the norm, not the exception to the rule. Every federal agency, every federal department, every federal government employee is doing the same thing to a lesser or a greater degree. They're all living large, like they're all Jay-Z's. They're all running around, spending everybody's money, living large on what? You. Living large on the poor they're supposed to be helping. You want to know why we're $17 trillion in debt? Because we've got people here who we're paying to live a lavish lifestyle that most of us have never seen. I don't get a chance to go into a restaurant and order a $60 dinner. And if I had to spend my own money for it, I wouldn't anyway. I'd go to a restaurant where I could get a $9 or a $10 dinner. I know the silverware is not quite as shiny. The plate doesn't have quite that same level of sheen. I know the tablecloth is plastic instead of linen. I understand that the water glass doesn't have a stem. I get it. The waiter is in blue jeans or black slacks instead of an evening gown. But how do you sleep at night? How do you put your head down on that pillow and meet with your girlfriends or your buddies and say, you know, we're sitting here, we're taking care of these poor people. Boy, I tell you what, we do everything. We work so hard. We work so hard. Really? How many kids could have eaten while you got a massage? How many mothers could have bought an old, secondhand, used car that was reliable instead of all of you jumping on first-class flights? You know, the car that would have enabled her to actually get to work. I have to ask you, America, if this is the nation we're trying to save, and this is what it's made up of, people like this, then frankly, we should just let it go. If this is the majority, if this is the new normal, if this is the majority of Americans and how they think and how they act, then it's not worth saving. Hard to say that for the minority who's getting pummeled out there and are trying to do the right thing. So we have two choices. We can take everybody who's got this feeling of entitlement and strip them of it, or strip the nation of them, one or the other. And I suspect it would be a whole lot easier to strip the nation of them. You've been listening to America's Voice Now. Please visit our friends over at the Battery Station, batterystation.com. Real asset to our community. And a nationwide company that provides great services around the country. batterystation.com. Friends at AmericanResumeService.com. They've got a $200 resume package for $100. $100 will be donated back to America's Voice Now. You need a new resume, you need to update the one you got, now's the time. You can email me directly at mike@americasvoicenow.org. That's mike@americasvoicenow.org. See you tomorrow.